One of the best ways to improve at the board game Risk is to apply mathematics to the game, but you also need to be aware of tactics and player management. Today I'll share with you 10 of the best strategies from cold hard calculation to timing your big moves. This is Legendary Tactics. Risk requires a balance of knowing the odds, the players, and timing your moves. So starting with number 10, let's look at which continent yields the highest return. So for each turn that you hold a continent, you get variable bonus armies. In other words, we need to know for every territory that you hold, how many bonus armies do you get? So Europe has the highest return with 7 territories, and you get 5 armies per turn. That's a 1.4 territories per army return. For your interest, Asia is 12-7 with a 1.7 return. North America, 9, 5, and 1.8 return. Africa, 6 territories, 3 armies, and that's 2 territories per army. South America, 4, 2, and 2. Australia is 4, 2, and 2 as well, so Australia has the lowest return. So while Europe may be the best yield per territory, you also need to be aware of which continent is the most defensible. So countries that have only 1 or 2 access points are much more defensible than ones with 5 or 6 entry points. So here's a graphic created by Walter Hickey that illustrates the numbers. In order, these are the most desirable continents mathematically. And the winner is Australia. You've got 1 border territory. It's 2 armies per turn return, and so that's a 2 bonus armies per border territory yield. That's pretty solid. Next we have North America with 3, 5, and their result is 1.7. Asia is 5 and 7 armies per turn. That's a 1.4 bonus. Europe, 4, 5, and a 1.25 yield. Africa is 3, 3 with a 1 bonus army per territory. And South America, 2 border territories, 2 armies, and 1 bonus army per border territory. So South America is the worst choice there. At a glance, you can see that Australia is the easiest to defend with 2 bonus armies with only 1 border territory and access point. However, if you want to maximize your return, you want to strike a balance between number 10 and number 9 here, defensibility and return on your investment. In that case, the winner is North America. It's the best choice because it yields more armies than Australia, but it hits that nice middle point. However, you probably don't want to try to win North America too early in the game. You need to wait till the mid-game in order to secure that. While Africa is the easiest to invade, remember, it's also the hardest to hold. For number 8, we'll talk about the early game. When unit numbers are low on the board, it's most logical to take small continents first. Losses are very costly early on and can really set you back, so you should attack conservatively when the battles are fought with mostly even numbers, and you should play very active defense in order to secure the early army bonuses. But as the game progresses, so too should your strategy. If you need to lose some smaller continents, like Australia, in order to graduate to more profitable options, do it. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please be sure to stab the sub button now to get more strategy guides like this one and to help us out. For number 7, we'll look at when you should attack. This is very straightforward. Since the game is heavily dice driven, it comes down to probabilities. You've probably noticed that bigger battles almost always go to the attacker. This is indeed the case. The larger the battle, the bigger the advantage for the attacker. Check out this chart that breaks down the odds. What this illustrates is that the minute you have a unit advantage, you should attack. As an attacker, even 1 more dice than your opponent is a huge statistical advantage. The only time an attacker doesn't have a statistical advantage is when they have the same number of troops in battle and less than 5 armies in the conflict. On to number 6, Continental Drift. One advanced strategy that serves 2 main purposes is called the Continental Drift. The idea is that when 2 players are vying for control of a continent, rather than just continuing to counterattack each other, you can drift away and focus to another continent instead, and the rewards are twofold. Rather than fighting a war of attrition where neither player wins, the drifting player can consolidate their forces and find a less fortified route. Also, this avoids forming a direct confrontation with another player, especially early at the table when it's important, and so it keeps you above petty rivalries. And when other players get into those battles of attrition, you'll have the reserves you need to leap in on the weakest player and no longer play the coward that you once appeared to be. We need to speak about cards for number 5. Remember that Risk uses a leveling mechanism that increases the value of cards as the game progresses. Though you can turn them in when you have 3 of the same card, you only have to turn them in when you have a set of 6. So don't be afraid to hold on to your sets at the start of a game for a few rounds, just so that you get better value for your cards. But as a general rule, if you have a set of cards, you'd likely want to spend them so that you aren't a target for someone to eliminate you so they can steal your cards. You should aim to earn a card every turn. Early in the game, attacking territories with 3 or fewer units will help your card draw and also minimize losses. Optimally, you'll attack a single unit, get the card, and not suffer many losses at all. Number 4, balance of power. If you find yourself against an opponent who has more units than all of the other players combined, it's only a matter of time until they wipe the board clean. As a minority power, you need to use your charm and your charisma to unite the players to work against the board leader. Conversely, if you're the power player, your job is to divide and conquer your enemies. Make sure to play up the other players' petty rivalries over who gets to control Australia and point out when other players are pushing to steal the game. Also be sure to mention when particular players are dominating small continents. Nobody likes that. If I'm omitting any strategies, or if you can build on the ones I've included, please add your thoughts in the comments below. Number 3, let's turn to positioning. Positioning your troops is a really important consideration. The bigger the concentration of troops that you have on your front lines, the less likely your opponents are to attack. It's psychological. However, it can become tempting to overcommit your troops to a defensible position, which can lead to stagnation. While defense can keep you in the game and keep you alive, it doesn't often win the game for you. Don't forget the name of the game. Take risks when you can secure your conquests without overextending your lines. Group your forces so that your opponents battle each other rather than you. But be ready to sally forth when there's an opening or a weak spot in enemy lines. And whatever you do, don't get cut off in Australia. There's only one way out. Number 2. For this tip, one element of the game that is often overlooked is the personality of your opponents. Some Risk players go into a game with a plan mapped out in advance. You've got your hardcore Australian conquerors, and no matter what you do, they'll go in and they'll take it and they'll hold it and they'll throw everything they've got just for that glory. Other players will have their sights set on South America from the outset because it's relatively easy to defend and it often flies under the radar. Unlike in Australia, you're less likely to be trapped there. So figure out who your opponents are and what it is they want. Then find another path. While they overcommit to preconceived strategies, heedless of this board state, adapt to that board state and don't battle over entrenched positions. Find the soft spots and hit them hard. Number 1, timing the big risk. Perhaps the most important distinction between really good Risk players and the average ones is knowing when to time the big risk or the final sweeping blow that wins the game. Risk is a game of ebbs and flows. When a player makes a push to conquer a continent, they leave themselves vulnerable. So gather your forces in a position that doesn't draw too much attention to your power, but that lets you surprise your opponents at the right moment. Wipe out a weak player, steal their cards to fuel a huge and sudden explosion of power. Plan your execution ahead and know your route to victory, moving along a continuous, non-branching path of territories. Risk is a game of odds, numbers, and timing, so play the odds. Manage relationships at the table, adjust to the real-time shifting of the game, and when the time is right, go for it.